the Green Mountains of central Vermont. This is Friday News Dump for January 10th, 2014, with your hosts, Greg Crawford and Francis Goodwin, with Deborah Goodwin behind the camera.
U.S. stocks rose today, setting the Standard & Poor's 500 index higher for the week, as weaker than estimated jobs report prompted concern that the Federal Reserve may accelerate the pace of stimulus cuts. The benchmark index has dropped 0.3% so far in 2014, after climbing 30% last year, the most since 1997.
U.S. wholesale inventories rose a bit more than expected in November, suggesting that restocking would probably contribute to economic growth in the fourth quarter. The Commerce Department said on Friday wholesale inventories increased 0.5% after a revised 1.3% rise in October.
Labor Department data released today shows U.S. employers hired the fewest number of workers in almost 3 years in December. However, the department says the setback was likely to be temporary amid signs that unusually cold weather may have had an impact. The surprisingly weak job growth figures, however, complicate the picture for the Federal Reserve, which last month announced plans to scale back its massive monetary stimulus program. The unemployment rate in December fell 0.3 percentage point to 6.7%, the lowest level since October 2008, but the decline mostly reflected people leaving the labor force.
The Obama administration said today it will recognize same-sex marriages performed in Utah. Attorney General Eric Holder says the government will provide federal benefits to the roughly 1,400 gay couples who were married there before the U.S. Supreme Court halted such nuptials on Monday. Utah temporarily became the 18th U.S. state to legalize same-sex weddings when a federal judge ruled on December 20th that a state ban on gay marriage was unconstitutional. The U.S. Supreme Court Monday put that lower court ruling on hold at the request of officials in the conservative, predominantly Mormon state. Little more than a decade ago, none of the 50 U.S. states recognized same-sex marriage. Since then, attitudes have changed rapidly in some parts of the country.
A federal judge Wednesday approved a settlement for J.P. Morgan Chase for its role in the Bernard Madoff criminal Ponzi scheme. J.P. Morgan Chase and U.S. prosecutors agreed to settle criminal charges that the bank violated anti-money laundering laws by failing to alert authorities to warning signs its employees encountered in dealings with Madoff. The settlement, which defers criminal charges against the bank until January 8, 2016, requires J.P. Morgan to pay $1.7 billion forfeiture and improve its anti-money laundering controls. If it meets the terms of the appointed date, prosecutors can dismiss the charges against it.
Don't you wish you could get that kind of consideration, ladies and gentlemen?
Why aren't they in jail? They're crooks.
Of the lowest order. But before the top of my head blows off, let's go.
Deferred prosecution. That's
U.S. House Majority Leader Republican Eric Cantor says the U.S. House will pass a stopgap funding measure next week. The measure is aimed at preventing a government shutdown for 3 days as negotiators try to finalize a $1 trillion spending bill. Lawmakers have been trying to reach an agreement on the massive funding bill by January 15th, when all government spending authority expires for military and domestic discretionary programs and federal agencies.
The Iraqi government Saturday lost control of Fallujah Islamist militants. Lost control of Fallujah. A suicide bomber in Baghdad yesterday killed 23 Iraqi army recruits and wounded 36.
A sniper killed a man and 6 people were wounded on Sunday in clashes between districts in Tripoli, Lebanon, and supported rival sides in neighboring Syria's civil war.
The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights Organization says that a massive car bomb killed 18 people, including women and children, yesterday in Syria's central Hama province.
A bomb detonated on Monday in a tribal elder's home in Khyber Agency, Pakistan, killing 10 people and injuring another 9. A 14-year-old boy was killed yesterday in northern Pakistan when he stopped a suicide bomber at the main gate of his school, but he saved the lives of all of his schoolmates. A car bombing today in Karachi, Pakistan, killed a senior police investigator known for pursuing Pakistani Taliban militants. 2 other officers with him were also killed.
What did we say, huh?
I heard some story about they captured a suicide bomber, and it was a 9-year-old girl?
Yeah, I read about that.
That's just awful.
Yeah,
Just awful.
Well, what the Taliban likes to do is take these little kids and say, well, we're going to kill all your brothers and sisters, your mommy and your daddy, if you don't walk into this crowd and blow yourself up.
Yeah, I know that.
It's a nice bunch of guys.
A suicide car bomb detonated Monday at a police checkpoint in Ghazni province, Afghanistan, killed 3 police officers. The Afghan government yesterday announced the release of 72 Taliban fighters from jails, despite American objections that they pose a security threat.
Gunmen killed 30 people on Monday in the central Nigerian village of Shanong in the Riom local government area.
Both belligerents in the Syrian opposition Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant conflict Tuesday executed dozens of their combatant prisoners.
2 suspected al-Qaeda militants were killed in a U.S. drone strike on Wednesday in the South Yemen province of Hadramaut.
Dennis Rodman apologized yesterday for a drunken outburst regarding American detainee Kenneth Bae the day before he sang for the birthday of North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, apparently it was like Dennis Rodman does Marilyn Monroe for Kim Jong.
Basically, it was.
Yeah,
it was, and
like,
he was.
Happy birthday, Mr. Premier.
Mr. President.
Is he president or
Well,
premier or
Mr.
dictator?
Turtle,
Dictator.
Supreme Leader.
Supreme Leader.
Supreme Leader.
Mr. Supreme Leader. Happy birthday to
But he
you.
had all of the histrionics down. He was doing a great job there, flashing his arms around. He is a seriously disturbed individual.
Well, this is his last moment in the sun here, and he's milking it for all he can worth.
And he better keep old Jong-un happy, because that boy's got a nasty temper. Spain today invited Sephardic Jews to return after 500 years of exile.
Gee, thanks. I found a new apartment.
Facebook Wednesday bought the Indian startup Little Eye Labs.
Volkswagen said today that it sold a record number of luxury cars.
I meant to get more details on that one. I guess they just sold a bunch of luxury cars. A 3-story building under construction in the southern Indian state of Goa collapsed Saturday, killing at least 14 people.
A small jet carrying 3 Mexican men from Toluca crashed Sunday while trying to land at the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport in Colorado, killing the co-pilot, seriously injuring the pilot, and slightly injuring the passenger.
4 U.S. servicemen died Tuesday in the crash of a U.S. Air Force HH-60 Pave Hawk along England's Norfolk coast. All right, on that note, we're going to take a break. We're going to go to Gregory Crawford's weekly rant, and then we're going to come right back. So stick around.
Hi, I'm Greg Crawford with the Friday News Dump, brought to you by World News Trust. Of all the malevolent machinations perpetrated by radical right-wing corporatists, one of the most despicable has to be their concerted effort to privatize public education. These oily and thoroughly dishonest people pay shallow lip service to the lofty ideals of public service, but they are lying through their teeth when they do it. Their sole purpose is to turn what has always been and should remain a public service into a revenue stream that enriches a few at the expense of the many. In this instance, it's at the expense of our children. And mean, greedy people who would steal a child's future for financial gain are so vile that they deserve no mercy whatsoever. In order to figure out how to neutralize this threat to education, and by extension the stability of our economy and society, we must first understand the motivations of those behind this diabolical scheme. And without exception, their principal motivation is pathological selfishness. Such selfishness is invariably intertwined with an equally pathological craving for dominion over the lives of others. In fact, pathology defines every aspect of the personalities of those behind the efforts to privatize government functions that were instituted to promote and protect the common good. Contrary to the superlatives with which they prefer to describe themselves, they are not the smartest guys in the room. Oh, they possess a certain simian cleverness in their ability to manipulate people and even to amass considerable fortunes by nefarious means. but their short-term greed blinds them to the inevitability of their ultimate failure. As the old saying goes, you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you can never fool all of the people all of the time. You're gonna get caught. And the proponents of privatization are starting to get that deer in the headlights look about them. Small wonder every privatization scheme perpetrated thus far has been an abject failure. The quality of products and/or services has plummeted while the costs have skyrocketed, and brazen fraud and the disappearance of billions of dollars has become endemic. The most glaring example being the outsourcing of tasks that the military had historically managed in-house, so to speak, to hopelessly corrupt and inept companies like KBR. They couldn't even manage to install lighting for barracks showers without electrocuting several servicemen. And though no one can be sure, because the accounting was so opaque, it is rumored that the light bulbs cost taxpayers $1,000 apiece. So there's that. With regard to the topic at hand, Dick Cheney and his hand puppet George W. Is Our Children Getting an Education? Bush instituted No Child Left Behind, the cynically misnamed program to save public education from itself. In reality, it was a scam from the get-go, designed to force public schools into failure through the imposition of draconian standards and testing that often bore no relevance to the curriculum that semester. In other words, students were expected to answer questions about subjects they had not studied. Every school was expected to improve by certain rigid percentages, or they lost funding. The most destitute schools in the inner cities were judged by the same criteria as the schools in wealthy suburbs: fall below an arbitrary level of achievement, and vital funding from the feds evaporated. Even if the best schools in the country fell below that benchmark, it was suddenly branded as a failing school. You would think that additional help and funding would go to the schools most in need, but not in the upside-down world of the neocons. Oh, no. If Johnny and Janie weren't learning fast enough, then the teachers were vilified. External influences such as poverty, family problems, or learning disabilities were not factored in. So a school's rating could blow up simply because it was adhering to other federal standards that mandated that children with learning disabilities be accommodated in the classroom. Teachers were between a rock and a hard place, a classic case of damned if you do and damned if you don't. As a result, instructing children in the art of critical thinking went out the window, and everyone had to teach to the test or update their resumes. In a little more than a decade, the performance of American students as compared to those in other developed countries has fallen into a sinkhole of mediocrity. Well, what can you expect when the content of school textbooks is controlled by religious fanatics who think the jury is still out on the theory of evolution? They're probably suspicious about the theory of gravity, too. And forget about the theory of general relativity that ushered us into the nuclear age, or as they would probably say, the nuclear age. The point being that critical decisions are being made by people so uninformed that they don't even understand the difference between a theory and a hypothesis. Such staggering ignorance should not be a party to such important decision-making processes. If you want to be part of the discussion, then do your homework. That goes double for the politicians who enact stupid and malicious laws like No Child Left Behind. One of the most unfortunate aspects of education in America is an ingrained distrust of education in general. Sadly, there are people that joyously wallow in ignorance. They are resentful of the accomplishments of others and even more resentful of their success. To acknowledge the value of education would be to admit they were wrong, and that sure as hell ain't happening. The children of such people are deprived of intellectual stimuli from birth, and so begin their school careers at a considerable disadvantage. And all too often it goes downhill from there. Efforts to mitigate these deficits are cut off at the knees by politicians more concerned with obstructing initiatives from Democrats than they are with actually doing anything to help their constituents. And the constituents who would benefit most from the programs they obstruct are the same ones that habitually re-elect them. Go figure. Next week, we will look at some possible solutions. Be sure to tune in.
And we're back. Take it away, Greg.
A Canadian National Railway train from Toronto carrying crude oil and propane derailed and caught fire on Wednesday in Plaster Rock, New Brunswick, in the northwest part of the province, causing 45 homes to be evacuated in a rural area. No one was immediately injured, and the fire has diminished so far, with the propane not exploding.
9 passengers on the Dhoradan Express from Mumbai died Wednesday when the train caught fire.
2 crew members died on Wednesday, and another is missing after a U.S. Navy MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopter made an emergency water landing off the Virginia coast, east of Virginia Beach. 2 survivors are being treated at Norfolk Hospital. There is one that died, and unfortunately, they have not been able to find the missing sailor.
Oh. An avalanche Wednesday caused 1 death and temporarily trapped 3 other people outside the boundaries of Vail Ski Resort on Vail Mountain in Colorado.
Oh, that's those people that are skiing out of bounds. They're
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I think so too. That the people that ski through trees. Oh man.
Yeah, they always lose that confrontation too.
Yeah, really.
An explosion yesterday at a Mitsubishi Materials chemical plant in Yokkaichi, Japan, killed at least 5 people and injured 17.
West Virginia Governor Earl Ray Tomblin declared a state of emergency yesterday for 100,000 West Virginia American water customers in 5 counties because of a chemical spill on the Elk River.
Canada's Alberta Health Services Wednesday confirmed the first avian flu death in this year's in Alberta. A person admitted to the hospital on January 1st died on January 3rd in Calgary.
Czech Foreign Minister Jan Kohat used strong words Monday to condemn the discovery of illegal weapons at the Palestinian embassy complex, where a possible booby-trapped safe killed the ambassador Jamal al-Jamal January 1st. Kohat described it as a serious violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations.
American-born Colleen LaRose, who calls herself Jihad Jane, was sentenced on Monday to 10 years in prison for a failed al-Qaeda-linked plot to kill Swedish artist Lars Vilks. Vilks had depicted the head of the Muslim prophet Muhammad on a dog. They didn't care for that.
Venezuelan beauty queen Monica Spear and her British ex-husband were murdered after a carjacking Monday in Caracas.
Wow.
Infanta Cristina, the youngest daughter of the King of Spain, Juan Carlos I, was charged by a magistrate on Tuesday with tax evasion and money laundering.
Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty crazy. I think
You're a
that's kind of,
princess?
yeah. Oh, I think it's kind
Well, the girls probably never had any limits, and they...
yeah.
Man. A former aide to Philippines First Lady Imelda Marcos was sentenced in New York City Wednesday for attempting to sell a painting of Claude Monet allegedly bought with embezzled funds.
Maybe she had sold some of her shoes. The U.S. Department of the Treasury Wednesday sanctioned the Sinaloa cartel enforcer El Chino Antrax under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act. The act virtually prohibits U.S. citizens from conducting any financial deal with the drug lord and freezes his assets.
A jury at the High Court London Wednesday returned an 8-2 majority verdict of lawful killing at the inquest into the death of Mark Dugan. Dugan's death at the hands of Trident Gang Crime Command Metropolitan Police firearms officers in August 2011 sparked the 2011 England riots. However, the jury also found that Mark Dugan was not holding a gun when he was shot by the police, sparking protests outside the court and in Tottenham.
Wait, I thought the police in Britain didn't carry guns.
That's once upon a time.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not sure about
That
that.
was
They're prancing around in
Before that
military
was
garb.
long before the Troubles, that the bobbies didn't carry firearms. But for the past 30 or 40 years, a lot of them can put a great many holes in you in a very short time if you aren't very careful. So, 7 suspects were arrested yesterday in the deaths of Venezuelan actress and beauty star Monica Spear and her ex-husband. Their 5-year-old daughter witnessed the roadside shooting and was also wounded.
Yeah, that should have been combined earlier. Sorry about that. Whoops.
It'll be reflected in your gratuity.
Yeah, take it out of my pay. Rap band Insane Clown Posse yesterday sued the FBI for accusing its fan group, known as Juggalos, of being a criminal gang. This is really pretty ridiculous. This is like if they called Deadheads a criminal gang, you know, because, some of them have gotten in trouble.
And the Juggalos paint their faces and stuff. I mean, they
look like
they're
kids or something.
clowns.
Yeah,
They're clowns. And on every conceivable level. You gotta
I think that
you gotta get out more, boys.
but I think maybe they don't know what to do with all this information they're collecting, so they got to go
Bust some people.
bust somebody, and so the juggalos must have.
Do that reverse engineering that they do on the bus too. You know what I mean, when they make stuff up.
A book released Wednesday by former U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates criticizes President Obama for his handling of the war in Afghanistan. Oh, where do you start on that?
Where do you start on that one? He's right. Why did they criticize him? Because he was trying to end the war.
Yeah, all he wanted. Yeah.
And he was trying to pull out of Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh my! And I loved the bit about how Biden has been. He was quoted as saying in the book that Biden's been wrong on every foreign policy initiative for the past 40 years. Here's like one of our more,
All right,
you
Gates,
may not agree with him, but he's been, longest serving senators on the Foreign Relations Committee.
He's not
and
Dick Cheney.
Gates came into power under the Bush-Cheney regime, and he has the gall to criticize
Yeah.
anyone's
Yeah.
standing on foreign policy issues. Excuse me? Guess
I'm sure
again.
that he was just paid by, the Koch brothers or something like that to write this
Actually,
book.
it's Coke, but I like your
Oh.
idea better.
The U.S. Senate Monday confirmed Janet Yellen as the new chair of the Federal Reserve. Yellen will be the first woman to hold this post.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie
I
apologized
was waiting to
yesterday
get to
for
this
his
one.
senior aides intentionally causing a traffic jam on the George Washington Bridge in September for political retribution, which he says he's very, very, very sad about, and he had absolutely nothing to do with, even though he tried to get somebody to blow off the investigation on December 12th. But there'll be updates on this story, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned.
Oh, yeah. The air is going out of that blimp.
Not fast enough.
Here's another one. An Indian diplomat whose arrest in New York City sparked an international incident involving India and the United States was indicted today for allegedly lying to obtain a work visa for her housekeeper, which incidentally, like everybody else in New York City does. Everybody that has a housekeeper, well, I say everybody, but 99.9%, all falsified, their documents.
Or just don't bother.
Right.
They
It's
just
the
Well,
name.
they
Pay
claimed
the
that she was being paid $4,500 a month, and she was getting like, $553 or something like that, because they're paying him way less than minimum wage for the work. And it's interesting that the attorney that brought the charges is also an Indian, a naturalized U.S. citizen. So he was. I guess he was feeling particularly sanctimonious when he went after this woman. So there'll be more on that one too.
She was asked to leave the United States under the rules of diplomatic immunity.
Who was the
The
employer or
the person
housekeeper?
who was going to employ the housekeeper
I
was
see.
going to be, she was a part of the the diplomatic contingent.
I got it.
India said that wasn't very nice. India's launch Sunday of the communication satellite GSAT-14 marks the first successful flight of an Indian cryogenic engine.
This is another one I meant to get the background on, excuse me.
What's a cryogenic engine?
You have
Well,
any idea?
cryogenic engine is basically something that operates on temperature differentials. It's
Okay.
Cryogenics. It's certain aspects of it are really cold, and
Right.
that temperature differential is what drives the thing. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I understand. Oh, I thought cryogenics had to do with Ted Williams' brain.
Yeah, well, there's that too, but I don't think they're burning Chet Williams' brain this time around.
Oh,
I
okay.
have to look this up because this is interesting to me. Because it's awful cold out there. I don't know how having a cold thing would make it go anywhere in the depths of space. But
Well, because the depths of space are pretty goddamn cold.
and they're also hot. It depends if the sun's shining on it. So maybe
It's the differential that
Yeah.
they can monitor.
Yeah. As long as it's getting sunlight, it could probably use that somehow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, updates as events warrant.
Yeah, breaking news. Mount Sinabung in Indonesia yesterday erupted once again. Man, wouldn't it be wild having
Oh,
a
boy.
volcano erupting?
A 5.1 magnitude earthquake yesterday in the Straits of Florida, about 112 miles east of Havana, Cuba, swayed medium-rise buildings in that city.
I don't think they have high rises there. That's what I was thinking.
No, probably not.
It was in.
In
Yeah.
Havana, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised it didn't generate tidal waves.
Well, it depends on whether there's enough, if there's some aspect of the crust that dislodges to make waves happen, then there might be a tidal wave. But if it's just, some friction plates, having a hard time, then it's not likely to cause a tidal wave. It's when a great mass of earth, either underwater or above water, goes into the water, then you get your tidal waves, and life becomes very unpleasant on the beach.
Here's a good one. Siamese twin whales. The first co-joined twin gray whales ever reported were found yesterday in Mexico.
Aww.
Isn't that cute?
Oh, what kind of whales are they?
They couldn't have survived.
Gray whales?
Mm-hmm.
So are they swimming around conjoined?
I don't know.
They're probably lying dead conjoined. I mean, you can't possibly survive under those circumstances in the ocean. That's just not happening.
I bet they could if they cooperate and flip over when each one needs to breathe.
We'll
and
get
stuff
more
like
on that one too if there's anything
Okay,
to it. I think
well.
Greg's probably right. I didn't even think about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, talk about slipping under the radar. Last month, the United States Court of Appeals in New Orleans handed down a decision of monumental import to working Americans. It is ruled that employers may require employees to sign legally binding agreements to arbitrate all disputes with the employer and to do so as individuals. This divide and conquer ruling effectively eliminates class action suits as a means of seeking redress for illegal or unfair labor practices. And justice for all? Yeah, right.
The so-called polar vortex that hit North America this week is estimated to have caused about $5 billion in damages and lost business in the United States. The bone-chilling cold, snow, and ice that gripped much of the country, affecting about 200 million people, brought about the biggest economic disruption delivered by the weather since Superstorm Sandy in 2012. A spokesman for the business weather intelligence company, Planalytics, in Philadelphia says that while the impact came nowhere close to Sandy, which caused an estimated $65 billion in property damage alone, the deep freeze's impact came from its breadth. Still, the $5 billion estimate pales in compared with the annual gross domestic product of the United States at about $15 trillion, working out to maybe 1/7 to maybe 1/8 of one day's production for the entire country. Some businesses benefited from the vortex. On-demand cable TV and restaurant delivery services did booming business, and
fuel oil companies, perhaps.
as did home centers and convenience stores where people went to stock up. Online retailers benefit from customers with an estimated $30 billion worth of new holiday gift cards burning holes in their pockets. Boston-based Hopper Research says the frigid temperatures caused a 52% spike in searches for flights to Cancun, Mexico from people in Minneapolis and Chicago.
Yeah, I want to go to Miami, honey.
Yeah. My favorite wine. I want to go to Miami.
Maybe you just looking in Cancun makes you warmer.
And here's some rather unsettling news about the ground under your feet. Turns out it might not be as solid as you thought, especially if you live anywhere near Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone is famous for its dramatic geothermal activity, such as Old Faithful, the geyser that releases a plume of superheated water every 91 minutes. Yellowstone is also situated right in the middle of a vast caldera of one of the largest supervolcanoes on Earth. Scientists have long known that the ground in Yellowstone has been steadily rising due to the expansion of the huge magma chamber beneath the park, which has recently been determined to be much, much larger than previously thought. Now researchers at the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility in Grenoble, France, have discovered that supervolcanoes do not require an external trigger of any sort to become active. They can erupt spontaneously simply because of the expansion of the magma. Once the volume exceeds the capacity of the chamber, tourism in the western United States will decline precipitously. But scientists say we shouldn't worry. Eruptions of supervolcanoes are incredibly rare. How comforting.
U.S. gold-winning Olympic athlete Lindsey Vonn announced Tuesday she's pulling out of her run for the 2014 Winter Olympics due to a re-injured right knee.
It's summer in the land of koalas and kangaroos, and Australia is experiencing extreme heat well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit at night. This does not bode well for bats. When flying in such high temperatures, they get overheated and die, falling from the sky by the thousands. Authorities in Queensland estimated that over 100,000 bats succumbed to the heat this past weekend. Although residents are being cautioned not to touch the carcasses, local agencies are overwhelmed by the sheer volume, so collection has been slower than people would like. So they have been causing quite a stink. And so are the decomposing bats.
Yuck.
Bats.
Poor bats.
And that's the Friday News Dump for January 10th, 2014. Greg Crawford behind the camera, Deborah Goodwin. I'm Francis Goodwin. Thanks for joining us. Join us next week.